Okay. We'll call the meeting to order for the city of Saratoga Springs, Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021 at 6:02 p.m. Present tonight, we have Councilman Podeska, Councilman Wilden, Councilman McComber, Councilman Karn. So we do have a quorum, and Councilman Porter. So we do have a full quorum. I've asked Councilman Wilden to lead us in our invocation and Councilman McComber to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for this day, and we're grateful for the blessings that we have to live in this wonderful city in this area, and we're grateful for the beauty of the surroundings around us. And we ask you to bless us this evening. We'll be able to make good decisions and be guided to do those things that will continue to improve our lives of all the residents and family and friends in our city. And these things we say in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
If you please join with me in repeating the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay. Let me read the COVID disclaimer. I, Jim Miller, the mayor of the city of Saratoga Springs, hereby determines that conducting the city council meeting in an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. The World Health Organization, the President of the United States, and the Governor of Utah and the County Health Department have all recognized a global pandemic exists relating to the new strain of the coronavirus. Due to the state of emergency caused by the global pandemic, I find that conducting a meeting at an anchor location under the current state of public health emergency constitutes a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who might be present at the location. This written declaration expires 30 days from the date signed. So expiration is March 6th, 2001. We have item 5 on our policy session, public input. Time has been set aside for the public to express ideas, concerns, comments for subject matter not listed on the agenda. We do not have public hearings tonight, so if you have comments, please be respectful in your comments. Please avoid repetitive comments, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Owen will be watching our clock tonight. Is there anybody here for public input?
Yes, we have one, Nicholas Whiting. Let me move him up as a panelist so he can speak.
Okay.
Mr. Whiting, you should be able to unmute both your video and camera if you want.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Nicholas Whiting, and my wife, Shawn, and I would like to provide a brief input regarding a sewer flood that happened in our basement on January 13th, 2021 as a result of a backup on a city main sewer line. Imagine if your home that you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and months and hours of work to finish your basement just the way you would like, and then have the entire basement flooded with raw sewage as a result of a backup from a city main line, leaving you with close to $50,000 worth of repair and damage. And then imagine being told by the city attorneys and insurance adjusters that the city was not liable and not willing to assist you with your recovery. And then imagine finding out from this on the city website that the city does have a published sewer backup plan that offers to compensate homeowners whose basements are flooded as a result of a city sewer main line, but then being told that that does not apply in this situation. We've been dealing with claims adjusters. We've been dealing with sort of the runaround as a dead end for the last 47 days. And you can imagine the toll this has taken on us as citizens and us as family and our home. We respectfully ask the council and the mayor and the city administration to consider their liability policies and investigate and appropriately research our claim, as we believe it is a valid claim based on the evidence presented. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you. Okay, Owen, is there anybody else for public input?
There is not, Mayor.
Okay. At this time, I will close the public input portion of the meeting. Mark, you've got staff working with them. I know more discussion.
We do. We actually have members of the local government's trust here, Steve Hansen, as well as Jeff. Where's Jeff's last name? Jeff's in here. Jeff Rowley. Sorry. Here, if you'd like them to respond or to answer any questions that the council may have at the time. They have been looking at the claim. They've been evaluating it. They've been, looking at, all of the information that we have on that, and they're available if you'd like them to respond now, or we can do it at another time as well.
Council, do you have questions?
No,
I personally,
my question's been addressed by staff earlier. Sorry.
Councilman
So
Comer?
if I can, real quick, I think that obviously it's a horrible situation. We understand that, that we have insurance for a reason. It's really probably not wise for the city council to be making public comments, but I would like to hear from the insurance adjusters what the situation is, because I sort of put myself like, if you got in a car accident, I wouldn't say much. I'd let my insurance company take care of that. And I want to make sure that we're respecting our insurance company, the one that we've hired, and hear from them, as well as still make sure we're representing and meeting the needs of the residents. So.
Yes, let me just go ahead and say, first of all, I want to express appreciation for the opportunity to come and just fill in some information. And I've got Jeff Rowley, who is our claims manager from the trust. And one of the things that he'll go into some of the details on this. But please know, we recognize that these are sensitive situations and difficult situations. Our job as your carrier is to make sure that we're paying what we owe and that we're defending what we don't owe. And that's really what our whole basis is. And so with that, Jeff, why don't you go ahead and just take a minute to kind of discuss how we've gone through things. Thank you.
And let me just echo that, having worked in public entity claims here in Utah for 28 years, I've never seen a happy homeowner with their sewage in their basement or even fresh water in the basement. It's just an awful situation. Feels like a violation. It's happened to me myself in my own home before. So it's awful. And I've expressed that to Nick Whiting when I've spoken to him. But nevertheless, it's our job to look at these situations and determine whether or not the city would be liable. The standard for governments is that they have to be negligent in some way in order for there to be liability under the Utah Governmental Immunity Act. Negligence in terms of a sewer system is that the entity fails to maintain a proper maintenance and inspection program. That is not defined very specifically across the board because it's based upon the age of your system, the size of your system, what problems you've had. Certainly areas where you've had problems require additional maintenance and inspection, where other areas just a routine is fine. And so we've taken a look at the history of this particular location. As far as the city is aware of, we've not had any backups from this particular section of pipe. It was also maintained properly in saying that. What I mean is that within the last 14 months, this line was cleaned, and it was also TV'd. And then it was re-inspected in May of 2020. So probably more frequently than usual at this particular location, the city has been on site and done what they need to do to make sure the system is running well. So we really couldn't find any records of problems here. The Whitings have suggested that this line goes down into an area where there's a particular plant that can be problematic. And that's true that they grow roots, but they generally don't grow roots deep enough to get down into pipes. and there's really no history or standard relating to these particular plants. So we really can't find that the city acted negligently. When the loss happened, the city responded within a half hour to the home and began working on it. They found that there were roots that had started a blockage. Much of the blockage, though, was from wipes that are in the system. And we all know that those wipes are a problem for our sewer systems, but people still flush them down. Because this pipe was inspected, this very manhole was inspected in May of last year, and then in January of last year as well. We know that the roots, or at least we don't have any indication that their roots were identified at that time. The roots that were found in the pipe in January were small and thin, but that doesn't mean they can't catch and collect things. And that's what happened in this particular situation. But the city responded appropriately, cleaned the system out as quickly as possible. And so we really don't find that there is any negligence on the part of the city, but the city has purchased from the trust as part of your policy, a no-fault coverage of up to $5,000, where the city says, you know, we're not at fault, but we recognize how awful these things are. And so we'd at least like to offer $5,000. And we have offered that to the Whitings. They have indicated their damages are up around $50,000. 5,000 doesn't get you there, so we understand their concerns, but we don't find any liability, and we're offering what we can on behalf of the trust and the city to the Whitings.
Mayor and Council, if I could just add as well, I have had no contact with the Whitings at all. No one in my staff has either, so I'm not sure what they mean as far as I've told them, but I have not spoken with the Whitings. I've been notified of it probably about less than 2.5 weeks ago, and I've just been in the process of fact gathering at this point.
I'd just like to take one other minute here and just express our appreciation for the leadership of the city. It's a great example of what government can be like and what it should be like in terms of being sensitive and responding to these things from a professional standpoint, and making sure that we're doing all we can to protect folks by doing our job on the maintenance side. And Mark and his team has done an exceptional job in that regard.
So, Mark, the no fault policy piece we have on there, how long have we had that?
Ooh, how long have we had coverage with the trust? I believe it's been there the whole time.
We've always had no fault.
That's good to know. Having been in the Whiting situation 4 weeks after I finished my basement, that would have been good to know before I was left holding the bill myself. And a 4-week-old basement was trashed. So I feel for them. I get it. I get the insurance.
Mayor, and we appreciate that. And I think one thing that this has done is raise somewhat of an awareness in the community of the need to have those additional insurance riders and things from a protection standpoint. I think none of us would like to be left in a similar situation where we're underinsured or underprotected in a case such as this. And so again, let me just reiterate, if there were perhaps different circumstances that put us in a liable situation, then certainly we would understand that. But in this case, we just don't feel that there's a justification for that. So, if you have any other questions for either Steve or Jeff, we appreciate them taking a few minutes to be here and answer any questions. And Mayor and Council, thank you very much for your questions.
Mark, could we also, I know this doesn't address the Whitings a problem, but could we have Annalise maybe do some public outreach on the damage that those flushable wipes do to a sewer system? Again, I know we've done this multiple times, but if we can remind people again that they're, just because it says flushable on the package, that doesn't actually mean that they are.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there's going to be an ad campaign that was supposed to be starting up, which we were going to partner with TSSD on. and there was going to be some education associated with that. We'll follow up on that as well and get some of the content. I believe it was going to be a statewide push at one point for that, and we just have not seen the state necessarily take the lead on that. But we'll certainly share that and push that out. And again, the relative newness of our system, it's in pretty good condition in that regard. And so, but again, we've seen the impacts of flushable wipes that cause issues, and we'll definitely follow up with that with more information and education.
And then I had a neighbor who had a situation like this, and it was the flushable wipes as well. And their insurance, homeowners insurance, covered them because it was negligence upon a neighbor. So they didn't go after like the city insurance, but they went after their neighbor if they would. If you don't know the neighbor, your insurance will often say, because if you have to show that your neighbor was negligent to then cover your damage, just a thought, because they were successful in getting their homeowner insurance to pay for it as a result.
Thank you very much.
If I may offer, the trust insures about 170 other public entities in the state that run sewer systems. And if it'd be of help, we would be happy to help coordinate some communication with others to see what they're doing, what their maintenance schedules are. In fact, what I have found in doing this research is that your schedule is a little more advanced and responsive than what we see in a lot of entities across the state. And so, but also you're responding more this year, 2020 and 2021 to the extra wipes that are in there because of COVID, and others are experiencing this too. So that may be a new issue where maybe several public entities can kind of get on the same page as to how you're addressing this and share ideas. We'd be happy to help facilitate that.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's usually a little longer than we spend on public input, but I appreciate the information and your time from the trust.
Thank you.
Thank you for your partnership.
Okay, we have reports. Anything from the city council?
I have a couple, Mayor.
Okay, Councilman Porter.
First off, I believe we're all aware that there was an accident at Foothill and Pioneer Crossing last night. It was a fairly serious accident. There's been a lot of concern in our area of the city about that intersection. Realizing it's a UDOT intersection, I just asked that staff reach out to UDOT and see if they can take a look at that intersection and see if there's any safety measures that can be taken to reduce any risks that are there. I know that we had them look at 2300 West a couple years back, and they were able to find some ways to improve the safety of that intersection.
Chris,
and then
yeah, sorry, Chris, if I can respond to that too.
Yeah.
I don't know why they have a flashing yellow left turn there at that intersection at all. It's too high a speed. So if UDOT can look into that and make it a little longer green light and no flashing yellow. I don't know if that was the situation here, but I've been on that road and I've seen people, stupid choices to cut in front of cars going faster than the speed limit coming out of, down that hill. It's a downhill, so it's easy to get your speed picked up. So I don't know. I just think that
or perhaps a blinking yellow alerting them that there's about to be
ahead of time
a red light,
similar to Pioneer
because they
Crossing.
come around that corner. It's a little blind. I don't know. UDOT will have to look into it to see what the best solution is.
I like the idea because Pioneer Crossing, they had a lot of success by putting the blinking lights on that too.
Yeah. The second item is I'm hearing from the Riverview elementary community. I guess Arrive Homes or whoever their successor is begun construction on the property across the street from Riverview Elementary. And I guess there's some trenching and some early infrastructure work being done. And there's some concern about a lot of people use a pathway or a trail through that area to access the school as a safe walking route. And so there's some concern about whether or not it's still safe to cross there. And so if we could just have staff look into either do we need to do something to maintain a safe walking route, or if it's not safe, then we need to communicate with that area that that area is temporarily not safe for walking, and they'll have to make other accommodations. But there's a lot of concern from parents about their children walking to school through a active construction zone.
Yes, thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. My concern is really one that is the developer doing something that is not protecting that route, and that's obviously the first concern. So we'll start with that tomorrow in staff meeting, and then we'll follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Councilman Carn?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I know I'm not the legislative representative, but I'm on the Utah Lake Commission. I want to report back on HB 364 and thank Mark and staff for all the work that went into that through all the different versions and feedback and meetings we had to have. As of now, HB 364 was held in committee, and I do not believe it will come back up this session unless Mark has other information. Not saying it won't come back next year, but I don't think the committee is going to readdress it this session.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. In answer to that, it is dead for this year, but it is. I've already spoken with Representative Bremer electronically, and we're going to probably be looking at it and working on it in the interim.
Okay. Anything else from the council?
I would imagine Mark may or may not speak to this, but I think the Utah League of Cities and Towns did quite well this year in pushing back a number of quite a few proposed legislations that would have significantly impacted the city like every year. But it seemed like, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark or Chris, it seemed like there was more than normal. Not everything was exactly how we wanted, but I think the league earned its value, at least this session anyway. I shouldn't have qualified that. That was a backhanded compliment. I didn't mean it that way. So,
so if you don't mind, Mayor, if I could just maybe give a quick ledge recap. Now the session's not over; it's still going for a little bit. I think midnight Thursday night is when it's sign or die.
Couldn't see any new bills though, at least.
No, we won't. See
committee meetings. They have to come out of committee today, right?
Yeah. So a lot of things got held in committee. So for example, short-term rentals got held in committee. That was something that was being pretty controversial. Right now, there's two billboard bills that we're trying to keep an eye on. One of them was SB 144. In essence, what that would do is it would actually open up Foothill Boulevard for billboards. And currently we've got that, restricted. And so that was one that we were very concerned if it came out, it could very much adversely impact us. There was another billboard bill, SB 61, which dealt with anywhere that you've got any video advertising. It means that if there's a billboard in the same zone, it would allow that billboard to convert from a standard, just plain billboard to a digital billboard. And we couldn't deny the application because we had video boards potentially in that zone. So luckily we don't have any billboards that would trigger that. But again, it is a bit of a tricky issue anytime they start messing with billboard legislation. House Bill.
Hey, Mark, what constitutes a billboard? Would like the fat cat signage be considered billboard?
Is small enough.
It has to be off premise.
Yeah, there's off premise and on premise, and it's square footage. We've tried to keep our square footage pretty low so that billboards would not be allowed in the city. And that's something that we've always got to be mindful of as soon as you go off-site advertising and things. But again, like I was indicating, SB 144 would have, I think, done away with the block that we would have had on restricting off-site advertising. So that would have been a blow to what we've tried to do with billboards and things. HB 98, which is local government building regulation amendments, that one is still hanging around a little bit. Perhaps it's going to get reviewed over the interim, and the note I'm looking at here says it was sent to a standing committee. So we'll kind of see what happens with that. A lot of use of force bills relative to the police department and things of that nature, which we were very concerned about. And there's just so many different bills that, kind of popped up and came across the table. It was pretty hectic there for a while. And the hope is that, the bills that we've been able to work on both as a city and with the league, are better, and that, we've tried to mitigate the impacts. I think it will be interesting. There's a bill that's, I believe it's called House Bill 409, which I do have a little bit of concern about. That particular bill, if I'm recalling it correctly, would basically mean that if someone is vested, and it really deals with vested rights of development, but if someone has vested rights with development, you can't change once they vest, and they're vested, and it's a pretty hard vesting. I asked the question in a league meeting earlier today whether that vesting works both ways. So, for example, if you were to adopt a community plan or a village plan, does that mean they can't touch it for 10 years? And there was not a clear, definitive answer as to whether it would work both ways. But a couple of the drafting attorneys with the league looked at it and thought that it could actually mean that with all of the changes that people keep coming in for, I mean, they're constantly amending their vested rights. If we looked at community plans and village plans as vested documents, then basically, we wouldn't have to renegotiate every chance they got to come in and re-look at or change those plans. And so I actually think that 409 could work to our advantage by limiting by hitting this vesting concept. We could then take a look at it differently. I sent it to Kevin earlier today, and obviously if it gets passed and if it gets enacted, then we'll take a look at that relative to that. But it certainly would tie our hands if we vest property. And conversely, I think it also will tie the hands of the development community. Once something is vested, there's kind of an expectation that you don't have to, you don't get to necessarily change that. So again, that's an interesting concept for us. So again,
it would take them a year to come back and change that, though.
We'll take a year to change that. So, but
it's interesting because we always extend the vested rights. Typically, we extend it. So really, it sounds like it'd be more beneficial for us until they fix it, like Chris said.
We'll have to see, but I think that is kind of the concept that we're going to want to look at in light of 409. If it passes, I think that becomes a very active conversation we have with the development community that says your community plan's set, your village plan is set. You don't get to claw back on things just because it's inconvenient for you, and perhaps it could narrow the scope of what they're trying to amend and change and things like that. I mean, for example, just all of the little small stuff where they build something wrong and their answer is, instead of ripping it out and rebuilding it, what was in the approved construction drawings, the answer is, well, we'll go and amend our code and change that so it's something different and it complies. So interestingly enough, those are the conversations that you'll be seeing likely in the near future. So anyway, thank you very much for your feedback on the Utah Lake Authority. We did put a lot of work in that. Representative Brammer ended up putting in, all of the changes that we'd asked. It still was a MITA entity, so make no mistake, there's that challenge. But he will be looking at it in the interim, and we've already had, like I indicated earlier, a conversation relative to trying to shape that so that it doesn't become something we don't want to see governing Utah Lake next year. So unless you have any other questions, I'll defer back to you as council.
Mark, I think it'd be interesting to the council also to hear about House Bill 446, I believe, the infrastructure bill that Representative Schultz was doing. The point that I'm interested in is they're looking at funding, what was it, close to $2 billion worth of infrastructure across the state. And our area would benefit. They would include it on the list of projects they're looking to fund with this investment is connecting Mountain View Corridor from Porter Rockwell to 2100 North, that last little bit. Doing an environmental impact study of Mountain View Corridor throughout our entire city, as well as completing, it's less in our area, but completing and starting the Mountain View Freeway from Porter Rockwell north to Old Bingham, which would help residents get in and out of the city easier. So those are some of the big projects. I don't remember if there were any others, Mark, that you thought would be that we would be interested in as a city, but.
No, thanks for bringing that up. That actually, that summarized it very well. It definitely is our toehold in getting Foothill moved forward, get the environmental work on that, and get that moving forward. Again, UDOT's plan is to try and get Foothill extended down to the south end of the city, between now and 2030, because they're hoping that the bridge project actually is going to be advanced in that 2030 funding year. So the hope is that that's queued up and ready to go and approved, and the environmental work has been done on that so that they can be moving forward on the bridge across the lake in about 10 years.
Real quick, I just
go ahead, Michael.
I was just say, when you talked about the billboard, it reminded me of something. If we could just have our code enforcement go, I saw some fabric billboards, if you would, banners for businesses that aren't even in our city. By the Wendy's, just south of the Wendy's, it's advertising for jobs in a business that's in a neighboring city.
Thank you. I'm going to have staff look at sign codes. Someone had mentioned a tractor trailer that was advertising basically a parked billboard, Wander, and as well. So I'll bring up.
Yeah. So there's this one there, like advertising for job openings for a business that they're trying to hire. But I get that they're trying their best to get employees, but that's, again, we can't, because it just opens that door, right?
Okay. Thank you.
And Mark, you may have mentioned this bill. I don't know the bill number, but there was the bill about allowing ADUs across all zones and cities. Is that the short-term rental you're talking about?
No, that was 82. Thank you. Yeah, 82. That I believe is still progressing. I don't know where it's located right now.
I think it's in the Senate.
Yeah, it is progressing, and it would allow us to identify a zone for future ADUs that would allow for ADUs. Now, we do allow ADUs in some zones, such as the PC zone and others, if they choose to apply it within their community plans or their village plans. So we do allow for ADUs. This bill was a little bit scary. Early on in the session, there was the thought that this was going to be basically retroactive, so that ADUs would be required in all zones, all housing zones that aren't certain requirements. Then it got clarified to where I believe it's now looking into the future. So future developments we would need to make sure that ADUs are allowed in future developments. They are not allowed in necessarily multifamily housing and things like that. It has to be long-term rental, so you can't use this for short-term rentals. There's some bumpers that are put on it, but I believe the percentage was about 50% of the community. So we'll have to take a good hard look at that if it passes and implement that. And again, that's to try and meet the affordable housing shortages. It's tricky. There was a lot of really interesting bills that are getting thrust on us now. That bill in particular, it is only internal, so it's only internal construction. For example, if you're adding on to your home or something like that, if you're expanding the footprint, then you could limit it, and you could have some restrictions. It really only gives us the ability to require additional parking if it's deemed necessary. But again, these would be internal ADUs. And so, for example, if you could turn your basement into an ADU with no external changes, it's something that we likely wouldn't be able to stop. And certainly it limits HOAs in the future from having restrictions against ADUs in them as well. So again, it's a pretty big step going forward, and we'll see what the bill looks like once it's finally finished.
Does it allow HOAs who currently do it to maintain those rules?
Now, retroactively, again, we're going to need to see what the final bill looks like. But the last read that I got from some of the attorneys working on this with the league was that it was not retroactive. Okay. So we'll have to verify that that's in fact true. And again, once the bill gets passed, we'll have Kevin dig into it, and then we'll come back and address it, in our code as deemed necessary.
And as you understand it, we allow ADUs in the PC zone, but is that still a legislative decision when a village plan comes in?
Interestingly enough, it was talked about with Beacon Point, and I think they chose to leave ADUs out of it. We looked at ADUs a little bit in Legacy Farms, and if I recall correctly, I don't think they opted to include them in their plan as well.
I thought Beacon Point had ADUs.
Yeah, Beacon Point does have ADUs.
Oh, thanks,
Just,
Strauss.
But
just
not
not
the
in the
current,
first
but not the
phase.
current, not the
In-
current phase.
Not
Yeah.
not 1A, 1B, but the
Right. It was the other phases, I think,
Yeah.
that they put it in.
Yeah,
And not the ones with multifamily already in them. It was some of the
Right.
bigger lots and things that are back behind the temple more.
Okay.
no, the community plan does allow it in any of the phases.
I thought that when I was on the planning commission. So,
I
but
stand corrected.
but if they come in with a whole nother community plan within the DAP, are we a legislative decision on that, or do we have to allow it within PC?
Depending on what this looks like, we may want to require that so that we keep the ADUs in that particular area, as opposed to, for example, if we have to designate a specific area that gets us to that 50% mark, would we rather do that in new construction, or do we want to go back and are there other zones where we may not necessarily want to see it?
It'd be better to, in my opinion, it'd be better to have it in new construction where we can plan for it and make accommodations for the needs as far as roads and parking and all of that, rather than trying to shoehorn it into a neighborhood that wasn't designed for that.
Yeah, and communicate to the current new buyers that this is what your neighborhood is allowing.
Right.
Anyway, we'll do a recap once we get the final bills and we see what the final legislation looks like, and we'll start addressing that as soon as those things become laws.
Thank you.
Mayor and Council, just to address that question really quick, I just refreshed my memory on the code. In the land use chart, it says, as far as accessory dwelling units, it says permitted if approved as part of a community plan in the planned community zone. So it is still a legislative decision that the council would have to make.
Great. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay. Really quick, also, I had Councilman Porter join me earlier this week, and we took a business on tour that's interested in moving their operation from a couple other cities and consolidating in Saratoga for about a 65 to 70,000 square foot building and bring about 70 jobs to the area. A lot of their employees live out this way, so it'll lessen traffic because they're not commuting like they were before. So we're still working with that. Owen joined us with that. He's been working with staff to get him information back. We showed him 3 or 4 pieces of property that they liked, that would work for their projects. They just needed some dimensions and some information where they were at. Owen, were you able to get that all to him?
Yeah, we're still waiting on some information, but I've sent over what I have as we've been gathering it.
Okay. Perfect. So we are actively pursuing the flex space and jobs in the area. The other thing is, Mark, vaccines out, pandemic's kind of winding down. I'd like to start looking at coming back the first council meeting in May, having full in-person meetings. I think that gives the state time to finish rolling out kind of their vaccine to the next age group for those that are getting it. And also, I think it is productive to be able to have staff and us there to interact versus Zoom. Unless the council has concerns, I just thought I'd bring that up.
Fantastic. We'll plan on that, and then I'll have Cindy prepare another declaration that extends the virtual meetings in the interim until that first meeting in May.
Perfect. Thank you for doing that. Okay. We'll move on to the consent items. I'll entertain a motion unless there's questions you guys have on it.
I sent edits on the minutes. I just want to make sure they got included.
Yes, Cindy and I noted those, and we updated the minutes to include when the mayor arrived to the meeting.
Thank you.
And then I just had a question with consent items when it's dealing with financial numbers. do we, because typically in the motion, we clarify what the financial amount that we're allowing for like a change order. So that's when we address the consent items as a whole, do we also address the dollar amount, or how's that typically done?
Yeah, I would, if you approve the consent calendar, it should capture the amount that's included in the staff report. So I think if you wanted to, in that motion, just, as specified in the staff report.
Yeah, Mark, I believe the resolution also does reference that. I can double check really
It's in
quickly,
there.
but I believe it
It's
is
included.
referenced.
I have a motion for you, Mayor. I move that we approve the items on the consent calendar, including the amount listed on the resolution.
Second.
Okay, I have a first from Councilman Porter, a second from Councilman Carn. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Councilman Porter,
Aye.
Councilman Carn,
Aye.
Councilman McComber,
Aye.
Councilman Wilden,
Aye.
Councilman Podeska.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We have one business item tonight, the fiscal year 2022 budget discussion. I believe we all got an email earlier to go through and answer questions. Does anybody have any other further discussion or questions?
No, I just
I
thank
have
staff
one that
for
I
getting
wasn't
all of
able
them.
to.
No, go ahead.
I have one that I wasn't able to get to staff beforehand. It's a point of clarification, if I could, Mayor.
Yes.
So I was looking through the list. This does not include all of the no's, right? This, because I was noticing that in the general fund, less than about 7% only were rejected. It looks like we're disapproving everything. So I was wondering what determined, or what was the qualification that left the no's that were no's in this list, and really how many more no's were there? Because I think it doesn't really show the public exactly how we're scrutinizing the budgets and the requests, et cetera.
Great. No, thank you for that. That's a great question. We work hard to try and help people understand upfront, not to ask for things that are for sure going to be no's. So as part of the budget instructions that we send out each year, we have pretty strict guidelines that say, is it furthering a council goal? Is it a necessity? Is it tied to something? How is it tied to, the overall mission of the organization? And so this year, you're correct. We didn't see a whole lot of superfluous requests that we've seen in years past, but we did see things that were tied to and directly related to specific needs and things. And so again, you don't have the gamesmanship, I think, that you might see in other places or in other organizations. And so yes, there's not a whole lot of no's, but there was also, I think, some conservative efforts on our part leading up to it. Now, if you recall, the budget process for us begins back in about end of October, November, and then we spend our time working with departments up through into December. And then we've got that list polished about the time we get to the retreat in January. And even then, there's still some things in flux. And so some of these items were in flux when we met at the retreat, and we were verifying whether we felt like those should be funded, if we had adequate resources to be able to fund those. And so the scrutiny process really is November, December, and then in this case, it was into January. So again, I do think that there was a lot of requests that just weren't made because of the process that we've got in place.
Well, and that's why I wanted to point it out, because I did have one resident who actually looked at the budget, because I sort of teased them because they were complaining about spending. And I said, well, do you even look at the budget? And then they reached back and said, why is everything being approved? It just seems like you guys just say yes to everything. I explained similar, but now, Mark, I'll be asking them if they watch the YouTube, which I don't know if they're on right now. So, but I just wanted to clarify that we have a conservative process. We are trying to be conservative in our departments, and it's not that we're just approving everything that's asked, but we're really approving the things that are most important to the city, and those are being asked of. So thank you very much. That's all I have, Mayor.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I think just a comment, not necessarily a question, because Mark already answered this, but one of the things I always look for is the increase in projected revenue versus the increase in projected expenses. Well, I don't know that it's super abundantly clear on the documents. It's there. You kind of have to back into it a little bit to figure it out because of governmental accounting, which is backwards from budget accounting is backwards compared to what anyone who makes money does. But we're conservative revenue estimates and conservative expense estimates, and the growth in both of them really are very close. So it just from a macro, you know, and similar to Councilman McComber, I look at each individual item, but I also look at it from a macro standpoint of fiscal sustainability. And Mark and Shalice and the city has just done a phenomenal job positioning us for long term, and the requests continue to be in alignment with, you know, a sustainable model. Sorry, that was a very long comment, Mayor.
That was a great comment. Okay, I will entertain a motion.
Do we need a motion? We just are talking about it.
Discussion, yeah.
Yeah, this is a discussion, yeah.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
I just wanted to add one more thing to Councilmember Comber's, just for information, especially if the public watches this, is as a department head or director, you know, Mark has done a lot of training with us. And so we filter a lot of the requests before we submit those. So there's a lot of requests that don't make it to Mark because we work with our staff to determine, you know, maybe there are things that can be done in the existing budget, or maybe we determine that they're not, you know, appropriate or timely. So what you're not seeing too is a lot of the requests that didn't make it through the director level that, you know, to Mark. I just want to make that
point.
We appreciate that.
And you know, one other thing that I forgot to mention, a lot of the yeses are restoring budget that we cut last year when we got panicked about COVID. And so, you know, I think that this year does look a little bit heavier on the yeses, but a lot of it was restoring cuts that we took in anticipation of some pretty draconian impacts from COVID. A year ago, we were really concerned. And so we cut, I believe, about $1 million out of the budget. And then, you know, some of those things in this year's budget are the restoration of those expenses that, you know, we took in kind of the concern mode, and we feel like those are appropriate for us to put back in. So thank you. Kevin pointed that out. So thanks, Kevin. Good score on that one.
Perfect. Okay, Mark, do we have need for closed session?
We do. I apologize. Kevin reminded me kind of late that we had discussed something. I sent out a link to all of you, and I'll stick on this call for a second to make sure that you've all got that. But I should have. You should have received an email link.
I got it.
I got it.
For that. So if you want to jump over to that meeting, I'll join you here in just 1 second.
Do we have to make a motion to go into closed session?
Yes, I'll entertain the motion for closed session.
So made.
Second.
I have a first from Councilman Comber, a second from Councilman Carn. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Sorry, Stephen.
Okay.
Chris,
Sorry.
you just have a more annoying voice. I'm just kidding.
Chris has an identifiable voice. Wilden was kind of like,
Oh.
Try to do it like that and whisper into it. A second. All right.
Okay.
I'm getting better at this with all of my work calls.
Right. I'm just like, am I in the right meeting? Did I click the right link?
Seriously, I'm on so many different Teams, Zoom, webinars. It's crazy right now with all this stuff.
You guys do Zoom?
We do Teams.
Yeah, that's what we do. Zoom drives me crazy after using this Teams all the time.
I love Teams. I love there's so much great functionality, especially collaboration opportunities in Teams. It's a really good tool.
We exited that last room and I went to my Teams thing to find my meeting because that's just
You're so used to Teams too.
I was like, oh, wrong platform.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's funny.
There's nothing else. We will adjourn the meeting. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.